Why do so many nice guys struggle with guilt, shame, and end up falling into porn addiction? Recently I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Robert Glover on the Superhuman Life podcast, author of No More Mr. Nice Guy, and somebody that has been tackling and discussing these issues for over 20 years. And what I want to share with you here today on the Rebuilt Man podcast is a small piece of that entire conversation. Now, down below in the show notes, I'll link the entire full-length episode where we attack and discuss so much more than the specific struggles that nice guys have with porn. But this specific clip dives into the origin point in Dr. Robert Glover's work with nice guy syndrome, how nice guy syndrome leads guys to struggling with guilt and shame, and ultimately how that leads them to end up falling into addictive behaviors with porn, sex, gambling, alcohol, drug abuse. So if you guys want to get the full length episode, it's going to be linked down there in the show notes below. But as always, guys, we appreciate you for tuning in here. If you are new to the podcast, The Rebuilt Man is dedicated to helping men that are caught up in porn addiction, whether it's providing tactical strategies, insights, discussions like the one we're sharing with you here today. We have over 300 episodes in this catalog, and we have a community of men that are committed to leveling up, that are committed to holding each other accountable and supporting each other through this journey. So if you're a guy out there that is struggling with porn addiction and you feel like you've tried everything already and nothing has worked, I want to extend an invitation to join us inside of our free 7-day reset. This is a free week challenge with daily exercises, habits to rewire your brain, and most importantly, a community of men that's going to walk alongside you in this journey. If you visit therebuiltman.com/7-day reset, you can get access to this challenge 100% for free. And if you decide to stick with us in the community, we have multiple options that fit everyone's budget. But let's dive into why nice guys struggle with guilt, shame, and how that leads them to ending up in porn addiction with Dr. Robert Glover from the Superhuman Life podcast. We love you guys. We'll see you on the other side.
In No More Mr. Nice Guy, where I introduce the idea of the nice guy and the nice guy syndrome, one of the first things I dive into is that the nice guy is not necessarily a nice guy, which seems, paradoxical or contradictory. And it would have been to me, back when I was in my 20s or 30s, if, somebody said, Robert, you're not a nice guy. No, you think you are. In fact, my ex-wife told me that. She said, everybody thinks you're a nice guy, but you're not. You need to get into therapy. If you don't go get therapy, I'm going to leave you. And I thought, well, okay, you're the one's unhappy all the time. So what I did begin to find out over time as I went to work on me and then started working with a lot of other men that identified as nice guys. I was a marriage and family therapist. Was that often a nice guy because he's trying to do two things. He's trying to manage his anxiety and his shame. And so we're going to come back to that in a minute. And by trying to do that, what he's doing is trying to become what he thinks everybody wants him to be, so he'd be liked and loved and get his needs met, and trying to hide anything about himself that might get a negative reaction from people, that might get him rejected, abandoned, shamed, scolded, beginning in childhood. So he's hiding his feelings, his wants, his emotions, his sexuality, anything that might get a negative reaction. So anytime anybody's trying to become something other than what they are in order to please people or hide anything about them, he's not being his true self. He's not being his authentic self. So he's not an honest, authentic man. And often because nice guys are trying to keep the peace, avoid conflict, trying to do everything right, they're anything but honest. In fact, that's one of the first things I went to work on, was dealing with me being an honest person. Because here I thought, I'm a nice guy. Nice guys are honest. But I wasn't. I didn't tell the whole truth. I would leave things out. I would try to keep the peace. I'd avoid conflict. I wouldn't bring up things that I thought might upset anybody, particularly the woman I was married to. So there are so many ways that nice guys aren't so nice. They're dishonest. They can be passive aggressive. They don't set boundaries. They don't ask for what they want. There's just a whole, and we can start, pulling apart all of these. And what was the second part of your question? I got the first part about the not so many nice guys. I can remember both parts.
I just think why are so many men today in the modern world living this way and not realizing it? And maybe you pointed at it with the two things that really stood out there to me is they're trying to avoid their shame, and they are wanting their shame and anxiety while still trying to get their needs met. So is there a correlation there that guys are ashamed of what they actually want?
Yeah. And that's a big piece, because my view of nice guys is that for most men, this begins really early in life, as infants, as children. And as infants, we're all about needs, right? But we can't get our own needs met. We're dependent on our caregivers for our needs. And as children, all children, when we experience anything uncomfortable, we're hungry and we don't get fed. We're cold and we don't get wrapped up. We got a bellyache and we don't get burped. We shit in our diaper and we don't get changed. Anytime that happens to a child, they internalize emotionally, they're the cause of that. Now, they don't think it because we don't have that part of our thinking brain online yet. But the emotional part of our brain, the fight, flight, freeze part of our brain, the part of our brain that's managed by the amygdala, that manages our heartbeat and respiration and survival, that stores up emotional memory. So these emotional memories, we believe we're the cause of these painful experiences. And all children have these experiences, and all children internalize them. And then all children try to find ways to manage both those uncomfortable feelings and try to prevent the things from happening again in the future that cause the uncomfortable feelings. And they're doing it, again, with very primitive brains. You did it, I did it, everybody does. So being a nice guy is just one way. Some people might become perfectionists, some might become rebels, some might just sleep a lot, eat a lot, later on drink a lot. Some might look, a lot of porn. Any way to medicate those feelings of shame and anxiety. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. I'm unlovable. I'm the cause of the problems around me. So I've got to become good enough and hide my badness. And so I would say, the majority of the population is walking around out there with both internalized anxiety and internalized shame, and using their own unique way of trying to deal with that. And trying to be a nice guy is just one of many ways.
What's interesting, Robert, is I mentioned before we started recording, the work that we do offline here with the Rebuilt Man is helping guys with pornography addiction. We've been running this organization for about 6 years. And I think one of the things that has enabled us to be successful, and one of the things I recognized very early on, is guys' porn use is not sexually driven. Sometimes it is, but a lot of these guys, it's a tool of self-regulation. And I told you, the reason I wanted to have you back here today is because the nice guy conversation is reoccurring in our communities. Every guy seems to come in that struggles with porn. Once we expose him to your work, some light bulbs continue to go off. And it's interesting you're saying here that these nice guy tendencies are rooted in a lack of understanding, real emotional awareness. And sometimes it's that first tool that a guy leans into. Instead of learning to express and regulate his emotions, he puts on this mask of being a nice guy. And then later on in life, because he's wearing this mask all the time, he's not emotionally aware of who he is. He hasn't developed any real time tools. So has this been kind of revealed to you there as well? Is that the similarities and commonalities with nice guy syndrome and some of these compulsive behaviors with porn? I know you mentioned a few other addictions there as well. What's the link between all of this?
Yeah, let's weave that in it, because that's a great way to pull them together. As I mentioned, when we experience uncomfortable emotions as children, we're like, if you kicked a dog enough times, the dog's going to try to find a way to not get kicked and not have those bad feelings. And so children are doing that with very primitive brains, and so are we. The dogs are doing it with primitive brains, so are we as children. And so children will do that by through eating or sleeping or becoming needless or wantless or crying a lot. I sucked my thumb until I was in kindergarten. So you think maybe I was self-medicating in some way the uncomfortable feelings of my early life experience. And all children do this. We're trying to manage our uncomfortable feelings using pretty primitive tools for doing that. And because most of us, as we develop through childhood and adolescence, don't get taught what to do with uncomfortable feelings. I mean, we don't get we don't even talk about uncomfortable feelings, right? We're told, don't feel that way, or we just go to our room. And I spend a lot of time in my room as an adolescent listening to rock music. That was how I managed uncomfortable feelings of my angry, unpredictable, moody father, right? And so, well, we are all trying to find ways to manage our uncomfortable feelings. So if you just look at the world around us, just look at all the adults walking the planet. You see a lot of obesity. You see a lot of alcohol use. Now, because we're aware that we see a lot of the pornography use. And even, you might even find a lot of people that are walking around all fit and healthy. And they may also just be trying to regulate uncomfortable emotions by I'm going to get to the gym and be fit and be successful, and then I won't feel bad about myself, right? So I remember when I was working with a few bodybuilders years ago in my men's groups, it seemed like every one of those bodybuilders was afraid of being one slice of pizza away from being their old, fat, pimply, bedwetting self. And so, even just getting to the gym regularly was a way of managing uncomfortable feelings. So we don't live in a culture that teaches us how to do that. And, hell, we'll use TV, we use internet, we'll use religion, we'll use anything to deal with uncomfortable feelings, except feel the uncomfortable feelings. Now, we don't know we're doing that, right? It just feels normal, because what happens, like you're in Tampa, I'm in Puerto Vallarta. It's probably warm there, maybe still kind of humid. It's late October. It's still warm and humid here. So I don't know about you, but I got an air conditioner up on my wall. I got a split unit air conditioner. I expect you might as well. And there's a thermostat, where I set the temperature of what I want the temperature to be. And that thermostat, if it does its job, I never notice a change in temperature. I never get too cold. I never get too warm if it's doing its job. And it will just adjust, how much cool it puts out, how much less it put. And we all have an emotional thermostat like that if we start to feel an uncomfortable emotion, might be boredom, might be fear, might be anxiety, might be hunger, might be tired. It could be any number of things. That emotional thermostat that is used to regulate and keep us regulated kicks in. And so without knowing it, we got an uncomfortable emotion perking up inside of us. And, we go browse the kitchen just looking for something to eat. Are we really hungry? Maybe, maybe not, but we're just browsing. Or, may go online and just start surfing, might just start doom scrolling Instagram. Might get on YouTube and just keep watching videos. Might you just, this would be a good time to go to Pornhub. And, we just kind of go, we don't even realize that all of those different impulses are controlled by our emotional thermostat that says, let's go get into our comfort zone, get into our comfort state. So yeah, all that inability to handle uncomfortable emotions as children translates into various ways of doing that as an adult. Like I said, all the way from food to religion to gambling to porn to social media these days. And we just think makes sense to us because our thermostat says, oh, go regulate now. So we do. And so I say in No More Mr. Nice Guy, I don't remember the exact figure. As a figure, it was just kind of a guesstimate anyway. But I said, I think about 80%, maybe more, of all nice guys have some struggle around sexuality. And for a lot of them, it is porn for a few reasons. One is that a lot of nice guys are challenged to go out and build healthy, intimate relationships with women, or if you're gay, with other men even. And because we're challenged to go do that, and because women kind of scare us, and because often we have a lot of sexual shame that we've internalized, it's just easier to go look at porn. Even just, scroll Instagram models, or go to, OnlyFans, or go find something that gives us a sexual hit. I call it safe sex. I mean, nothing's required of us. I mean, we never have, ED. We never, lose our erections. We never come too quickly. We never fail to please the woman if we go follow these safe sex. So there's one reason that I think that a lot of nice guys go the route of pornography is just because it's easy. It's safe, and we're not that good at forming relationships that would create sexual availability.
Guys, I really hope you enjoyed that small piece of the longer length conversation that I had with Dr. Robert Glover. As I mentioned in the intro, if you want to hear the full length conversation, down there in the show notes below, or search the Superhuman Life podcast here on YouTube or any other podcast streaming platforms. And it'll be episode 312 with Dr. Robert Glover. But as I mentioned, guys, if you are caught up in the struggle and you feel like you've tried everything already and you cannot see a way out of this struggle with porn and masturbation, we have a proven system, a model that has worked over 1,700 times, 1,700 successful transformations in the last 5 years, following our system, our protocol, and the use of our brotherhood community. So visit therebuiltman.com/7-day reset or click the link down there in the show notes below to get access to the first 7 days of your new life. But Coach Frank at The Rebuilt Man, we love you guys. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast if you want to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. But we'll see you guys on the inside over there at the Rebuilt Man community.